everyone. This is Michelle, and I'm here to do a March 2020 interactive astrology reading. This is the same report that I put up on the website. You can find it there in printed material if you'd like to go over it more slowly. But we're going to have some fun today and go over the reading using the astrology wheels here. This is an interactive astrology reading because although I'll be interpreting the transiting aspects for you, you will be able to apply the interpretations to your own natal chart. Now, if you don't have your natal chart handy, you're probably going to be able to understand the interpretations and how they might apply to your life anyway. You'll know where these things are happening if they're happening, but you can also dig in a little deeper by having a natal chart handy and applying it to the houses where you find the signs. So I'll be using an Aries wheel here. You can see on the ascendant we have the cusp of the first house and at 0 degrees of Aries. Your chart probably does not have Aries, 0 degrees of Aries on the ascendant. You probably have any other of these degrees all the way around the wheel on the cusp of the first house. And so as I am interpreting, what you will want to do is apply the interpretation to the houses where you find these particular signs. Before we get started, I just want to mention one other thing, and that is actually how I have these wheels set up. The inner wheel is March 1st, the very beginning of the month, and the outer wheel you can see matches that. The outer wheel is also March 1st, but as I go through the transits, we will have some fun and move these planets around with the outer wheel to see how things are shifting and changing. All right, so let's get started with the first aspect that I'd like to get into, and that is Venus in Aries at the beginning of the month. We see it here at 25 degrees of Aries on March 1st. Now I am recording in mid-month, so we are kind of going retroactively thinking about this. But again, if you would like to see the readings when they first come up, then look to the website where I put up the printed version. Okay, so we are looking at Venus in Aries at 25 degrees, and Venus doesn't particularly care to be in Aries. It would be considered in detriment because, of course, Venus rules Libra. And so in Aries, this is opposite the sign of Libra. Venus likes stability, to keep things very harmonious and even, and also is very concerned about relationships, fairness, and balance, where Aries is much more of an aggressive sign, and it's more self-assertive, we might say, ruled by Mars. Aries ruled by Mars, and so that tells us, that correlation tells us that Aries can be a little bit more combative perhaps, or concerned with the self. So we can see how Venus doesn't quite fit into this territory in a very comfortable sense. But what I'm interested in here also is how Venus is squaring the planets that are in Capricorn. So we see Jupiter here, Pluto, and Saturn in Capricorn. Now this is the beginning of the month, and again the outer wheel is starting out at the beginning of the month. That's why these degrees are matching currently. So we're looking at a cardinal square here. These are cardinal signs, a cardinal square. What you will want to look for in your natal chart, if you have it handy, is which house is Aries covering and which house is Capricorn covering, and it's probably actually several houses. It could be two houses, very likely. So the interpretation that I am looking at is that our equilibrium is somewhat disturbed at the beginning of the month. That sense of balance, perhaps, that we are more used to has somehow been upset. It could be looking at the stellium here that we see in Capricorn, that we're experiencing some kind of restrictions, loss, or limitations. And this does not feel good. Saturn, of course, representing discipline on the positive side, but also loss, limitations, or restrictions, also fear. With Pluto here so close by and Jupiter, it seems like these more negative sort of interpretations or manifestations are magnified. Now, I will mention, I can sort of hear someone saying, but Saturn in Capricorn is in rulership, and so that should be positive. And that's true. I think that there can be some positive outcomes, but I'm really looking at this square and I'm sensing some tension here. The idea that equilibrium is disturbed and that there is some sort of restriction, loss, limitation, or fear going on that does not feel good. We can also, with Aries involved here, feel almost forced or pushed forward into action wherever these troubles are occurring in our own situations. Let me give an example of this so you can apply it to your own chart. Let us say that either Aries or Capricorn, either sign, let's say that you find Aries or Capricorn in what we would call the houses of wealth. So let's stick with Aries for an example. That would put Aries in your second house, your sixth house, or your 10th house. So if you have Aries in the second, sixth, or 10th, the houses of wealth, it might be that the restrictions and the loss or limitations you're feeling have to do with something involving your work, your career, or material needs. Let's look at it from another angle. Let us say that you actually do have Aries in the first house. That's possible. Some of you may have Aries in the first house, or possibly Aries. Let's take the sign of Aries and move it over to the fifth house. Let's say in your natal chart, Aries is here in the fifth house, or another possibility, Aries in the ninth house. If you have any of those situations in your natal chart, Aries in the first, fifth, or ninth, then this sense of restriction, loss, or limitation could involve a sense of identity, your inspiration or enthusiasm for life, or perhaps your faith is disturbed in some way, or what you believe in. All right, let's look at one more example. Let us say you have Aries in the third house. All right, Aries in the third house, the seventh house, or the 11th house. All right, so I'm taking Aries and we're just imagining that we're just going to turn this wheel around, and so that Aries is right here in the third, the seventh, or the 11th. These would be considered houses of relationship. And so that sense of loss, limitation, or restriction might involve your social life, partnerships, or associations of some kind. Perhaps you feel cut off from others in some way, or restricted by others in some way. And this is also creating the sense that you are being pushed or forced into taking action where the troubles are happening in life. So in this way, we can see how this one aspect here that I'm looking at, Aries, Venus and Aries squaring this stellium here in Capricorn, can touch many areas of life. But the general idea is that equilibrium is disturbed. We're undergoing some sort of fear, restriction, or loss, and we could be feeling pushed forward to take action. Now, being that this is the middle of the month, this report was actually written at the first of the month when it went up on the website. But being that we are now mid-month as I'm recording, we can very clearly see how this is happening for just about everybody in relation to events around the coronavirus. In around March 1st, there was some awareness about it, but since then, in the last 2 weeks, there have been so many developments. Let's see how this continues on throughout the reading. This is really almost like a story with a beginning, middle, and end as we go through the month. And so the next aspect I'd like to look at is Venus conjuncting Uranus in Taurus, and that will be around March 7th and 8th. So as of my recording, this has already happened. Let's have some fun here with the animator. Let's change this actually to let's change this to 1. Let's change this to a 1. And then here we are looking at minutes, but we're going to change this to days, all right? And then we are going to go ahead and just one day at a time, we're going to move Venus up to the point where it conjuncts exactly Uranus. So let's take a look at how this is changing. You can see Venus moving in the outer wheel. This is still the 1st of March, and so that will remain the same. Let's continue to go forward. Here we go. And now we have Venus right there at 3 degrees, and we have Uranus just moving ahead. Just 1. There we go. Let's move it right there. Well, there they are, exact at 4 degrees on March 9th. I really have this exact conjunction just taking place over really March 7th through the 9th, as we see here based on this chart wheel. All right, so we know that Uranus represents really drastic, sudden change. Anything that has been stuck, any sort of rigid patterns that are going on in life, there is a potential with a Uranus transit for things to suddenly, drastically break apart and change. Because we have Venus involved as a trigger, we might say, as it crosses over Uranus, it's possible that these changes will be related to finances, money, possessions, or relationships, any of those things. And also because we have Venus in Taurus, this is the sign that it rules, we can sort of see it's doubly that this can involve particularly possessions and money. Now, clearly, March 9th, we can see how the financial markets have taken a drastic tumble with the coronavirus, the concerns going on worldwide, and Uranus does impact large social swaths, we might say. It's an outer planet, and so we can see how this clearly pertains to society at large. But you can also look to your own personal natal chart. Take a look at where Taurus is in your natal chart, what houses are covered, and you can see how this might be hitting you in a particularly personal way. Will it? Definitely. Well, we don't know exactly, and everybody's chart is different, but there could be a sense in which you can see how things have really turned upside down over the course of the beginning of March. All right, now the next thing I would like to look at is the moon. The full moon in Virgo on March 9th. Now we are almost there. We're at 15 degrees, but I would like to take us up to, let's go back. Let's have a little fun here. Let's go back 2 hours and let's just move this up. Let's say 1 hour. Let's see if we can get that moon, that little moon there in Virgo up to 19 degrees. And here we go. All right, so here is our full moon in March. I'm going to give you the reading, and this could be some fun. You'll actually be looking back to March 9th, and you might be able to apply this and see even more clearly how this relates. That full moon in Virgo is so interesting because, well, of course it's opposing the sun in Pisces. That's how we get the full moon. But what is really striking is how the sun is conjunct Neptune, also in Pisces. Neptune in Pisces. Neptune is in rulership here. This is a very strong Neptune situation here, and we have the sun conjuncting. So a very powerful full moon. This suggests that for many of us, there can be a real temptation here where Pisces is in your chart. So take a look at Pisces. There could be a real temptation to just want to dream the day away, to escape in some way from the more practical realities of life. The practical realities, of course, are over here in Virgo. With the full moon in Virgo, there can be a little voice almost in the back of the mind, a little voice, almost like a subconscious voice, we might say. And it is telling us we must deal with practical matters and details. If we don't take care of business, if we don't take care of our obligations, it will begin to show in a more glaring or drastic way, and this can wake us up from the dream. Because the full moon really signifies completion. It does signify completion, of course, and then we are going into a new lunar cycle. But it also tells us that this general message can be with us for the month. And that is, well, of course, sometimes we are going to want to escape and get away and just not face the reality of things, but we don't want to do this for very long. We have to attend to details and practical matters, attend to our obligations, or they will come up later in ways that will make us more uncomfortable, we might say. All right, now continuing on, we're going to take a look at something positive. As I said, this is sort of a story, right? We're telling a story. We've looked at the beginning of the month and how our equilibrium was sort of off balance, how there is some fear and restriction going on. Perhaps the full moon telling us that we really need to stay in the game here, to stay with it, and deal to these practical matters. And now we want to take a look at Mars in Capricorn specifically, because Mars will be in Capricorn all month long, and this is a very positive position for Mars. Mars is exalted in this position. Let's actually, again, let's have a little bit of fun here. Let's change this date to weeks. Let's change it to weeks, all right? And let's just go backwards to the beginning of the month again. We're taking a look now at Mars. Moving backwards, we're going 1 week at a time. Let's continue. Now we are just at, well, this is mid-February here. All right, so you can see we're at mid-February. And let's move ahead 1 week. You can see the calendar shifting. Let's continue. Let's get right here. Okay, so here we are at the beginning of February. We have Mars here at 9 degrees of Capricorn. And let's continue on. Okay, I'm going to continue forward now. Here's March 1st, March 8th, March 15th. We see Mars now at 19 degrees of Capricorn. Let's keep going and see what happens over the course of the month. Wow, look at this conjunction between Pluto and Mars. Very, very powerful, very, very intense conjunction. We've got Jupiter right by. We've got Saturn here is at 0 degrees of Aquarius. This is a very powerful day on the 22nd. Let's keep going though. What I'm really interested in is how Mars moves through Capricorn for the entire month. Now we are at the end of the month. Let's just go 1 week ahead, and now we can see Mars also April 1st is now in Aquarius. So what this is telling me, okay, here we are again at March 31st, is that even though we have these difficulties with the cardinal squares, the difficulties with the Venus conjuncting Uranus in Taurus, we also have Mars exalted. This says that we actually can take care of business and practical matters. We will have the energy and the desire to do so. This is talking about executive abilities. Mars in Capricorn says that we can make plans, we can execute them. Yes, occasionally we are going to be tempted to escape. We still have Neptune in Pisces. This is going to continue on. This is a very slow-moving transit, this Neptune in Pisces, sort of pulling us away into a dreamland. But Mars in Capricorn is saying we absolutely can face the situation and get things done. The reading is this: take advantage of this Mars warrior energy in Capricorn throughout the month. Make a list, check things off, get things done just one step at a time. We absolutely can do this. Look to your natal chart for Capricorn and see where the strength is. Where is the strength that you are getting in this area of the chart where Capricorn is? Now, I'm going to just jump a little bit into another concept. I do talk about this more regularly on the written report, but another thing that you can do is this. First of all, locate Capricorn in your natal chart. What are the houses that are covered by Capricorn? Then also look to where your natal Saturn is located. Your natal Saturn. Which house is your natal Saturn in? Because the two houses will be connected. The natal Saturn and also where Capricorn is in your natal chart, those two houses are connected. And so you can put these two things together and try to strategize for the remainder of the month about where you can gain strength and execute plans to take care of business. Okay, this is going to be important because at the end of the month, we can see here is Mars. Here is Mars in Aquarius, all right, and here we have Saturn also in Aquarius. This is a very important shift that we are going to feel because we know that Aquarius is a fixed sign. These are early degrees, and we also know that we had Uranus. We have Uranus at 3 degrees of Taurus, let me say. Okay, so we are looking at a fixed square here, a fixed square. Here is Uranus. We can see at 5 degrees. This is the end of the month, March 31st. This is the beginning of the month, right? We had Uranus at 3. Now we have Uranus at 5 degrees of Taurus at the end of the month. All right, and so we have this fixed square beginning to take shape. This tells me that by the end of the month, we are not going to be messing around here. People will want to fight for what they believe in. Those concepts, the idea of fighting for what is right and for what we believe in, are signified by the sign of Aquarius and also the planet Uranus, right? And so we know that people are potentially really going to be fighting for what they feel they deserve. It's very serious energy, and it is really going to be about what people own. What do people own, and how much goes out to each party? This is because we are looking at, of course, Taurus and Aquarius, and again, Uranus squaring Saturn and Mars. We're getting this warrior energy here. We're getting Saturn suggesting limitations. We're getting Uranus that is suggesting the idea also about humanity at large and people wanting to fight for what is right. If we aren't getting a fair shake, it could actually get a little bit ugly. Those were the words that I used in my report, and I'm going to stick with that. I think that people are going to feel very tired of feeling that they are less than or unworthy in some way. Now, how will this impact you personally? You'll want to look for where Aquarius and Taurus are in your natal chart. This is an area where you yourself might feel like you want to stick up for yourself and fight for your rights or what you deserve. Now, we're going to end the story, however, we are going to end the story with Venus right here in late degrees of Taurus, trining all of this energy. We have Saturn, Mars, Pluto, and Jupiter. Let's go back let's change this to days. All right, let's change this to days. There we go. And let's go back just a little bit. Here we go. So now we are towards the end of the month. Towards the end of the month here, and we have all of these powerhouse planets here, Jupiter, Mars, Pluto, and Saturn, in these late degrees of Capricorn here. These are the transiting planets. This is where we started the month, and this is where we're ending the month. All right. And then we have Venus here also entering these late degrees. Let's just go forward a little bit. We see Saturn moving into Aquarius, and we see Venus getting ever closer. Can we see this? Venus getting ever closer into an Earth trine right here with Mars, Pluto, and Jupiter. I'm just going to move it forward a little bit more. Let's take a look at another day. Boy, look at that. Here we have Venus at 24 degrees of Taurus in this beautiful trine with Pluto, also Mars involved, Jupiter. This is telling me that even though we had those early shakeups at the beginning of the month, we had that very difficult Venus at the beginning of the month right here, okay, right here conjuncting Uranus, suggesting there was going to be a big shakeup. But at the end of the month, we are looking at this beautiful Earth trine here. This is telling me that, if things are really shaken up early in the month, it's possible that I want to put it this way, just wait to see how the dust settles by the end of the month, because there's a possibility that our equilibrium can actually return. There's a possibility with Venus involved here that a sense of equilibrium can return somewhat. We may find more equity and fairness, or simply even with this trine, a feeling of relief. The transit is telling me also to really try to remain grounded through all of the turmoil that we are experiencing in the month of March. Remain grounded, whether it is doing actually specific grounding exercises or just being at home, getting away from things, centering yourself, and being very, very patient. The trine is suggesting that if we can even, I want to say, like, meditate, have images of the beautiful earth in mind, get grounded, that this is going to help us to get through, and that by the end of the month, indeed, it's possible that some of the things that are happening will even have a little bit of a silver lining to them, and that we can actually find that some things actually work in our favor. All right. Well, that's your reading for March 2020, your astrology reading, interactive astrology reading. I want to thank you so much for being here. Thank you for watching and listening as always. If you enjoyed this reading, if you found it helpful, I'd like to encourage you to subscribe to the channel or give the video a like. It helps so much. And please comment also if any of these interpretations seem to make sense for you. I'd love to see and hear from you about how the interpretations apply. I'll see you next time.